This is Marisa B. Welcome to Radiant Living, Inspiring Humanity to Thrive. Today I have with me Terese Bowors. Terese is a certified cannabis educator and coach. She is a member of the Society of Cannabis Clinicians, and she is on the board of Educator Nation. Hi, Terese. Thank you so much for coming. Did I say those all correct? It's called Educator Nation?
Educator. Yes.
Thank you for coming today. I am so thrilled that you're here because there's so much that I want to know. The first thing is, what exactly does a cannabis educator and coach do?
Well, number one, what we do is open the conversation about cannabis in a healthy way. So we have been under criminalization and under stigma with this cannabis plant since the 1920s. Prior to that, cannabis was part of our regular medical routines. We utilized cannabis for health and well-being all the time. Even Queen Victoria utilized cannabis for her menstrual pains. Her doctor prescribed it to her. And he even said, utilized in a safe way, cannabis is one of the most effective forms of health and for health and well-being. And so as a cannabis educator, I bring this new perspective. It's actually not a new perspective. It's a very, very old perspective. We're just bringing it back, but we need to re-educate because all of us who are in existence right now came with that training and that stigma and that education that cannabis is bad, weed is bad, pot is bad. And we utilize these words like marijuana and weed and pot to demoralize and criminalize this plant, but it's a plant. It really is a plant. And I always have, so you can see this plant behind me here. That is a cannabis. Well, it's not a real cannabis plant, but it's my indoor cannabis plant that stays on for display so that people can interact and see what this plant looks like. And we can take away the demonization and the stigma and what this plant is really meant to do. And that is its compatibility with our bodies to help us heal, to bring us back into balance and homeostasis.
So now, first question is, how did they use it when it was prescribed before? Were they smoking it, or were there other ways of using it? You mentioned like the Queen was using it, Queen Victoria. How did they prescribe that at that particular time?
Yeah, so mostly in the forms of tinctures. So they would infuse it into alcohol, and then also inhalation as well through smoking it and inhaling. So those are primarily the two main forms. And you would even see in the pharmacy, if you went to the pharmacy, you would see bottles of cannabis tincture, marijuana tincture, and they were utilized in our mainstream medical system.
Now, I want to tell the audience that you're in Canada, and that there are different laws there. And I also want to mention that I'm going to be having on a former senator from the state of New York where I am, and we're going to hear about all the laws. So I don't want to burden you with giving me all that information, but I do know that there is a difference, right, between cannabis and the CBD oils and hemp in general, correct?
Yeah, so shall we dive into that? What the difference is between cannabis, hemp, CBD?
Yes.
So the cannabis plant has different compounds in it and cannabinoids, which we know as THC, CBD, and there's many, many more. Those are the most two common ones right now that are easy to access, CBD and THC. So previously, prior to us really looking at the medical benefits of cannabis, we were mostly, so in the 60s and the 70s, and that's when we were utilizing cannabis mostly for the adult use purposes and to get that feeling of being high, which comes from THC portion of the plant. So when legalization came, especially here in Canada, one of the things I noticed is that people started to demonize THC. And then we had this research coming out about CBD. And so we polarized and we're like, CBD is the good cannabinoid because it doesn't make you high. And THC, that's the bad cannabinoid because it makes you high. But they actually work together. They're part of the cannabis plant. So I don't like to pit one against the other. I like to see what both of their benefits are. And they work really well together. One of the really interesting things that CBD can do is reduce the effects of THC. So I like this little story that I like to tell. Me and my sister were super close. We have been since the day we were born. We're 15 months apart, and we've traversed through life together. And so I often think about myself as THC, the little bit fiery one, the one that's kind of pushing the limits all the time. And she being more the CBD, the calm and the logical one. And so I maybe overconsume some THC. I'm feeling a little bit high, and I can call up my sister CBD and say, hey, I'm feeling too high. I took too much. Something's not going right here. And what CBD does is comes in and clears out some of the excess THC and brings down that high effect without blunting the positive healing effects of THC. And so this is why I really like to keep them together. Another reason that you might want to still have THC, because some people will say, well, I don't want THC at all. I don't want to get high. And you don't have to. With the right amount of dosing, you don't have to. But THC is really good for pain and for sleep. CBD is really good for anxiety and calming our moods and stabilizing ourselves. And in order for them both to work well in the body, CBD really needs a little bit of THC to activate it and to invite it into the system within the body. Have you heard of the endocannabinoid system?
I have indeed, yes, because I recently listened to someone talk all about it. I found it fascinating.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about that to the audience?
This is an amazing part of our bodies that we only was recently discovered in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s in Israel. And so we have a system within our body called the endocannabinoid system, and we create our own cannabinoids. So I mentioned that cannabis has cannabinoids, THC, CBD, and so on. We make our own cannabinoids in the body called endocannabinoids, and they include anandamide and 2-AG are some of the names of those cannabinoids. Very, very interesting is that anandamide, one of our endocannabinoids, is a Sanskrit word which means bliss. So this system within our body is supposed to help us create bliss within our body. Bliss comes when we are balanced and we have homeostasis within the body and our systems are working well. What the endocannabinoid system does, it's like the overarching system to all the other systems of the body, and it wants to bring balance and homeostasis to all the other systems so that we can experience bliss within our bodies.
Isn't that wonderful in our own bodies? Yes.
Yeah. And so to think that we have been deprived of this amazing plant that can work with us in our own endocannabinoid system is baffling. It really is. This should be the first thing that we're looking to when we have dis-ease within our body. It's balancing the endocannabinoid system. So that you don't have to use cannabis only to balance our endocannabinoid system. It just happens to be that cannabis pairs really nice with our bodies. But we can also look at other things like movement, stress reduction, drinking water, eating whole foods that work for our own bodies. And all those things that we do for our self-care and maintaining this being also maintains the endocannabinoid system.
So now you work as an educator, of course, and a coach. Now, how does that work differently than someone who, for example, sells products? Because I know that there are different laws, and in this state, it's very tricky. And for example, you can't grow anything at your home at all. There's not even a possibility of obtaining a license for that. Can't do it here in New York. And those that go through a rigorous background check, and then just to get the license to grow. And those that sell, I know for a fact, have to have a separate building. It cannot be attached, for example, in a strip mall. It has to be a separate building. So how does that work? How do you educate your clients and then also coach them? What exactly are you coaching them on after you educate them?
Yeah. So being that we're a little bit different in Canada and the US, I'll try to speak to both systems as much as I can. So in Canada, cannabis is federally legal, both THC and CBD. In the US, CBD derived from hemp, which contains less than 0.3% THC, is legal federally throughout the US. So anybody can get CBD legally. It's the THC that's state by state, whether it's legal. Here in Canada, our retail stores are prohibited from offering education and medical advice on cannabis. So all of our storefronts are only adult use or recreational stores. If you want to have education, well, actually, Health Canada did not really provide a lot of education for consumers here in Canada, which we're really, really saddened by. And this is where Education came about. So Education is a nonprofit organization where we are building a standard of practice for cannabis educators and coaches across Canada and internationally. So we're trying to bring a standard of languaging, a standard of like talking about the endocannabinoid system, so that we have like a structure of where to go to get really good, solid education. I'm not sure state by state what the rules are if you go into your cannabis store, if they can legally talk about sleep or anxiety or those
I
types.
don't think they can. I don't think they can. I think they have like a book kind of thing with information. I don't believe they can actually give you any type of medical or health advice.
Yes. Yeah. So it makes it really challenging for us as the consumers, because if we go to our doctors, especially here in Canada, and I don't know yet in the US how that's going, but a lot of patients will go into their doctor and say, hey, I really want to try cannabis. I've heard it's really good for my pain. What do I do? And our doctors are going like, whoa, no, I'm not prescribing it. I'm not helping you out. Some doctors even say, if you pursue this, I will drop you as a patient. So you need to get it. Yes. So this is, so even in Canada, we don't have it all right yet. Our medical system is not yet on board with our cannabis prescriptions. You can still get a medical cannabis prescription and then access medical cannabis online here in Canada. And then in some states, your stores are all medical. So it's only medical people that
Yes, I think that. Yes, I think here, yes, that you have to have the doctor's prescription. It has to be medical marijuana. And there are explicit facilities that's where you have to go to get it. It's dispensed only there, and it's highly regulated.
Yes. And so what me as an educator is really trying to do, and the people that I work with as well, is to be that first step for people, so that before you even go to the store and walk in and be overwhelmed with all of the choices and all of the words, and even the names of strains are confusing, like Billy Bob's whatever, and Kelly Kush, and like the names don't really help us to know what it is that we're getting and the experience that we're wanting. And so I really like to guide clients through an educational journey of understanding what the cannabis plant is, what it does, how it works within the body, how our endocannabinoid system works, and also setting out clear intentions and mindsets as to why you're reaching for cannabis. We have some concerns around overconsumption and around addiction and around the stigma of this plant. But if we draw a clear path forward of why are we reaching to cannabis, what are we reaching to it for, and also keeping track. So when you get your first product, maybe you find an oil that you like and you wanted to start working with that. Keeping track, what did you get? What was your starting dose? What were your results? And check back in, so that when you go back to the store, you can be like, this was great, but it wasn't perfect. I want to try something that has a little bit more CBD, less THC, or whatever adjustment you want to make along the way. That can be really challenging to make those adjustments on your own. So that's where Cannabis Coach can really help to fine tune. Cannabis isn't like a prescription where your doctor signs you take 2 pills twice a day, come back in 2 weeks and we'll review. It's not like that. Cannabis is everybody's dose is going to be different, and where you reach, what the method of intake, even like most of our prescriptions are by pills. You can take cannabis through a pill or a capsule. You can take it by an oil. You can take it by inhaling it with just the complete dry herb flower. You can make tea. You can lather it on your body. There are many ways to consume it for different purposes. And so,
and do they all work as well? Or do you find some work better than others? Some ways that you ingest it?
Depending on what you're consuming it for, what your body and how it responds to cannabis. So yes, it's very different. What works for one person might not work for another.
Well, I want to tell you, I'm happy to hear that, because I probably need it for some pain that I've had for a long time. But I find that because now we have this quasi-legal situation, I'm in locations and I smell it, and it is the most horrific stink on the planet. And I I didn't like the original stink years ago when I was young. I don't have anything against it, but I could not take it. I have very strong olfactory senses and I couldn't take the original stink. This one is worse. And I had to find out why. I literally had to do research and I discovered that it's another strain. As you mentioned before, it's actually another strain. That's why it's making it smell differently than the older stuff. So I'm happy to hear that there are a number of ways to take it. So in essence, because when you walk into a facility, you don't know what you're getting. If no one can tell you at the facility, you don't know, well, what way am I going to ingest it and what is going to work better for me? So you really have to have a cannabis educator, a cannabis coach to advise you what's going on. Now, do you do that one-on-one and in groups? How do you work as a coach?
Yeah, both. Yeah, I do online groups and I also do one-on-one, just depending on what people are working with. So specifically something like sleep, I like to work in a group of women and talk about sleep because we all can contribute and we also have different ways that sleep impacts us. So you're going to consume cannabis differently if you can't fall asleep versus if you wake up partway through the night. So it's even those type of getting just really fine tuning what it is that is going on in your body and what you want cannabis to do. And that will change how you're consuming, how much you're consuming, and just all the variables that go into it.
So now do you let your clients know, I know you give them education as far as which would work better for them or what they should try, but you don't advise any particular product, or are there any particular products? I know that with CBD in the United States, many companies make use of that item in products that they create. And so for all intents and purposes, you can buy that anywhere that it's allowed and it could be any company's brand. How does that work in Canada with the actual marijuana? How do you go and you get it? Like, do you tell them use this store or this product? How does that work?
Yes, sometimes depending on how close they are to me, and if I know what's local in my area. I do have some amazing. I'm from the West Kootenays, a town called Nelson, British Columbia, and we're like the pot capital of BC and almost of Canada. We have a huge community of cannabis growers and cannabis experts and people that have been in this industry for years and years and years. So we have a lot of wealth of information in the community that I'm in, and therefore we have a lot of amazing products available. But if I'm speaking with somebody who I don't know what resources are available, then there's usually a few key things that we look at. And one is fine-tuning what it is, what the product is that we want to start with. So let's say if we're working with sleep and maybe we want to try something that has an equal amounts of CBD to THC. So that's going to be the first one, is choosing the ratio. So let's say we're going to do a 1-to-1. So that's number one. So we know we're going to do a 1-to-1. Next, we're going to look at does it tell you what strain it is, or does it tell you what cultivar? And a cultivar generally tells you the type of plant. And there's three main types of plants. There's the hemp, there's indica, and there is sativa. And each of those three types of plants kind of give you a different experience. Our hemp plants have less than 0.3% THC, as I said before. So it's mostly all CBD. Our indica plants are grown in regions that are cooler. So like in my region, I'm in a mountain. And so in order to grow my cannabis, I need an indica plant because it's just more hardier and it's a shorter growing season. And it creates more sedating flowers. So things that really help with sleep and with pain. And then we have our sativa plants, who tend to be grown in regions that are warmer and have longer growing seasons, closer to the equator. And our sativa plants are really good for mood and uplifting and energizing. So for daytime consumption. And so that's what we're going to look at next, is what's the cultivar. So if we're back to sleep, we know we want a ratio of 1-to-1. Maybe we want a cultivar that is an indica versus a sativa or the hemp. And then we want to look at how are we going to consume it? So do we take it in an oil? Are we going to inhale it? Are we going to take it in an edible? What's going to be the best form? And that we would kind of work down as I'm working with somebody to determine what's going to work the best for them. And then the fourth thing that I'm going to ask people to do is to ask their store for a certificate of analysis, or COA. So a certificate of analysis gives you a report on that particular product. So what is the percentage of THC and CBD? Are there any harmful chemicals or pesticides that were grown that have residues in them? We want to make sure this is a clean product, no pesticides, no solvents, no molds and toxins. And so that COA will really help you to know. That's kind of like your little ticket. Like, you're selling me this product, but I want you to show me what it actually says on the COA so that I know it's a clean and healthy product for me. So that
I'm wondering
would
how that
be,
works here. I'm wondering how that works here, because how they must have some control to say
yes,
when you walk in to find out, because you really wouldn't want anything with pesticides on it.
no, exactly. And so that's why, with CBD being so readily available in the US, you possibly can pick up CBD at your gas station, right?
Yeah, yeah, kind of, pretty much. You can like
Yeah.
order it from anywhere or buy it anywhere that they allow it to be sold.
Yes.
But you don't
Yeah.
know. It's all different brands. It's all, we don't even really probably know where it's coming from. Us as the consumer, I should say we as the consumer, we walk in and I don't know, are we all reading every label? Where did it come from? Who grew it? I don't know if that's all on there.
Yeah.
I'm not
So
sure.
that COA, you can ask that in the US too. So
Yeah.
ask for that COA before you consume that product.
Mhm.
That's going to be your safety ticket.
Oh, wow, that's good to know. There's so much to know. There really is so much to know. You really would need a coach and an educator to let you know what's going on, because how would you even know where to start? And especially if you can't be told anything in a facility that you walk into.
Yes. One of the most common things that I hear from clients is that they went to a store, they grabbed something, and they took it home and they had a really unpleasant experience. And then that kind of tainted their experience with cannabis,
Yes.
either saying it didn't work for me, or I didn't like the high, or I'm never touching that again because that was not a pleasant experience. So that's why I really encourage people to go to a coach first, so that your first experience can be a positive experience. And then you can titrate your dosing and make adjustments as you go, with a guide beside you, because you don't want an unpleasant experience, especially if you have not consumed cannabis before.
Now, do you work in a block of time with clients?
Yes, in many different formats. I have offered 3-month programs and 1-month programs, depending on where I'm at as well, in my own health and healing journey, because that's number one. I take care of my own well-being first, and then I see what kind of energy I have. Do I have energy to offer a 3-month program or a 1-month program, or what kind of follow-up I have available? Yeah.
Because because you came to this journey because you weren't well, correct?
That's right.
Can you
That's
tell the
right.
audience a little bit about that?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So when I need to go back a little bit so that you understand how important cannabis and how just kind of auspicious it has been in my healing. So I grew up in a religious fundamental community who I didn't talk about cannabis at all. I didn't know
Wow.
anything about it. We didn't even go to movies. We didn't have playing cards. We were pretty separate from society, and we had our own belief system. We didn't utilize, we just were really, really separate. I left when I was 17 and started to explore the world just a little bit, but more from the outside. I didn't engage in partying or drugs or anything like that, because I just had so much of that foundation from my childhood that I was just kind of a silent observer. I got married and I had a couple of kids, and then that one of my eldest daughter, when she was 9, she got really, really sick, and she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which meant that our lives really, really shifted, and our just everything revolved around blood sugar testing, counting carbs, being prepared, and being up all night. And I was caregiving for her all night long. It was like I had a newborn again. And I couldn't sleep in between testing with her for her and taking care of her. And I was starting to decline in my own health and well-being. I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, and I didn't know what to do. I was napping 2 to 3 hours a day and pulling all-nighters to care for her. And I had this inner calling to the cannabis plant. And it just kind of like knocked on my door and going, hey, why don't you give me a try? And I didn't know anything about it, and I didn't know why it was coming to me. But I asked my husband, I said, I just have this deep desire to try this plant. And he's like, sure, let's do it. So he got some cannabis, and we put the kids to bed one night and rolled up a joint, and we went out to the hammock in the garden in a nice, beautiful evening. And I took my first puff with a joint that he had rolled. And immediately I felt this calm and ease come over my body. And as I looked up into the stars, time just slowed down, and I felt that weight of caregiving lift off my shoulders. And I couldn't believe that this was something that was so criminalized and just so not available for us. And it was at that point that I knew that this plant was something I needed to get to know more of. That night I had a really, really good sleep, and I learned how to work with cannabis to help me sleep and to help me be awake when I needed to work with my daughter at night. It was way more healing than a sleeping pill, and just really helped me to get my grounding again. So over the years, so this was about 14 years ago. Over the years, I started working more with cannabis, experimenting with it, learning about it and its healing properties. And when legalization came in Canada in 2018, I was just like, what can I do with this plant, and how can I share it with people and change the stigma that has been created? And right around that time as well, or a little bit earlier than that, my son was diagnosed with Lyme disease at age 14.
Oh, wow.
It was severely debilitating. He was bedridden and pain-stricken for years, all through his teen years.
Poor thing, so young.
So young. And I was at my wit's end, and I wasn't getting help from the medical community. So I turned to cannabis again, and I was listening to podcasts. And it was him that came to me and said, hey, would cannabis work for me? And he was 16 at the time. And I'm like, let's see. So we found a pediatrician who would prescribe him cannabis, and we began working with it for him. It's been a lifesaver for him. It helped to reduce his pain. It helped him to sleep, increase his appetite. And I believe it helped to stabilize his mood so that he's still here on this planet.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful.
He's had incredible healing. And I'm just so grateful that this plant has been part of our family's success. And so that's when legalization came, then I started studying to be a cannabis educator and a coach through the Cannabis Coaching Institute out of Boulder, Colorado. And then it just kind of took off from there and started exploring. So cannabis has been really present for me for chronic fatigue syndrome and for symptoms of migraines and pain, sleep, insomnia, anxiety. And it's been this constant companion where I've been able to titrate it in different ways and utilizing it in different methods of intake to address all of these symptoms.
And so now I actually watched a video that you did about how to tell the seeds. I think you had it was a jeweler's loop, and you were using it to see whether the seeds were ripe or not on the plant, or the buds, whether they were ripe or not. Now, you were in a greenhouse. Now, is that your greenhouse, or were you at a facility's greenhouse doing that video?
Yeah, that's my garden. So I have hoops. I have 8-foot hoops. So it looks like a greenhouse because it's all covered in, but it's actually a hoop. And I grow my own cannabis plants in those hoops, and throughout the whole summer season. And grow my own. I grow my own medicine, and then I make it into my own oils and make it into my own salves, so that I can utilize it for myself.
Right. So that's for private use. You don't sell your own product, or do you, or can you even in Canada?
In Canada, I can't sell it unless I have a license to sell.
Different kind of license. And then you would have, then it would be a license to sell. Do you also need another license to produce it or to grow it?
Yes.
For commercial use?
Yes. Yeah, you do. You need numerous different licenses for every stage along the way. Yeah.
Now, do you need a license to grow it for yourself? Or you just can there? How does that work? Because here we can't. I tried to find out about it just to get information, and there's no getting a license for personal use.
So across Canada, with the exception of, I think, 2 provinces, we can all legally grow 4 plants per household. And then if you need more, then you can apply for a medical license to grow more. So I do grow more than 4
Mhm.
because I go through a fair bit and I use it for demonstration as
Mhm.
well. And so those 4, anything that comes from those 4 plants, you can legally share. And so I love that
Oh,
part of
okay.
it. So I can legally share from 4 of my plants, but then from my
Mhm.
other medical grow, then I don't share from those.
Oh, wow. So they really have specific laws. There's so much to know. And it's very definitely a different type of law um than the CBD. Do they have laws for that in Canada? Do you have to have a license for that there in Canada?
It's no different. It's all cannabis in Canada. In
Right.
Canada, we
Okay.
don't differentiate between THC or CBD. It's
Oh,
all
okay.
under the same umbrella. Yeah.
See, here, I wonder why they do that. Maybe because of that old thinking. I just remember, I mean, I'm much younger than those videos that came out, but I remember that when we were younger, they were talking about these videos that were done, I believe, in the 50s, right? And it was all about how terrible it all was. I'm just wondering where that all came from, because there's so many people that have a bad understanding of it. And I think that they have criminalized it a lot because of what they saw in those videos. At least that's what it looks like to me, because that was the only thing they had to go on, were those 2 videos or whatever they did there.
Those videos came out after criminalization.
Oh, after. Okay.
Mhm.
So
So
they
that was
actually
to
made the law
enforce.
first. Oh, right.
Yes.
Oh, I see. See?
So then you have to prove the law, right?
Right. Yes, exactly. So they created the law, and then they released those videos, and then they frightened a lot of people, I'm assuming, because when people saw that, that's what they thought. But I'm wondering why they actually created that law. That I wonder why. I wonder how that all happened.
There's a lot of
What they,
theories
yeah.
about that, and I wonder if your other guests will be able to go more deeply
Hmm.
into it. I only have surface knowledge, and some of it has to do with racism. Some of it has to do with
What a
just
surprise.
yep, yeah,
Right.
and also what it does, because
Mhm.
when we are utilizing cannabis, especially when like in the 60s, is a perfect example of how people checked out of society. Our government doesn't want us to check out of society. It needs us as cogs, right? It needs us following through. And sometimes
Right. We
cannabis
have to grind
opens,
the wheel
we have
for
to grind the
them.
wheel. Yes. And at times cannabis can be really enlightening and opening up of our awarenesses and our thoughts and our beliefs to kind of question things. And if there was too much questioning going on, I wonder
Yeah.
if
Well,
that
they
was
certainly
kind of
don't
what,
want that.
no,
They
no,
really don't want that going on, because why should we all have our own minds, right?
that's right. That's
No.
right.
But so let me ask you. So if I personally, so I need a cannabis educator coach, because I'm having an issue with some sort of pain and I'm not getting any relief, or my preference is to not have medications, because let's face it, there are symptoms. I mean, there are side effects with every kind of medication. There is no medicine that you can take that's not going to give you something. Or if they say it's not going to give you something now, 5 years down the line, there's something they find that it now causes. So if a person does not want to use all of this type of medication and they really would prefer something organic, something natural, how does that work? Can they contact you?
Mhm.
And then can they join a group with you? Well, first of all, do you have a group that they can get information from, like a group on Facebook? I know some of my guests have had Facebook groups, and they provide information to people as to when they're doing maybe a big group. Do you go anywhere? Because, the world has changed since the pandemic. I don't know how bad your area was hit, but as I said earlier, I'm in New York and we were hit severely. Even though I'm an hour and a half out of the city, most of the people fled up here to remove themselves from the city. And we were all in lockdown and we had a lot of issues. And the world has changed since then. So do you travel to educate people?
Yes, I most certainly do. So I'm in British Columbia, which is the far west coast.
Mhm.
So I travel throughout British Columbia and Alberta, which is the next province over as well.
Mhm.
I have flown to the east coast, to the east as well. So yes, I do travel, but most of my programming is online through Zoom. So
Mhm.
any groups are usually on Zoom. I do a lot of seniors education as well, which is in person. So we have we call them elder colleges or senior education, continuing education.
Mhm.
And so they'll have me come in either on Zoom or in person, depending on where they are located.
Mhm.
And I will do some basic cannabis knowledge with seniors. And then from there, they can either decide to work one-on-one with me or in a group. I have seniors drop-ins once a month where seniors can come in to a drop-in coaching session and bring their questions. And I'll usually have a bit of education during that time, and then a chance for them to share their experience and what their questions are, and I learn from other people's questions as well. So it's a really interactive format. I have a women's club. It's called the Speakeasy Women's Cannabis Club. And we've been meeting monthly over the last couple of years. And each month is a different topic. And that's a longer, like that's a 2.5 hour evening that we have together. And, or is it 2 hours? It's 2 hours. And we go through more specific of how-tos. So this month in November, sorry, probably it'll be gone by the time we post this, but we'll do a DIY salve class, or we'll do a bath bomb making class, or we'll do make your
nice.
oil, or we'll talk about gardening and how you can grow your plants if it's legal in your area.
And that's online. You can do that online. So anybody can join from anywhere in the world, really.
Yes.
Women, all right, but from anywhere in the world.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So most of those group programs are all online and accessible from anywhere. And then the other educational settings where people come and bring me in, then that's opportunity to be in person. One of the other really cool things that I teach is at our local college. So I put together some training programs for our local college, and I teach through our continuing education program here. So those are all in person. We have full day education courses. We do the DIYs. Which is really, really fun.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Open to men and women, whoever is interested in joining those classes.
Now, do you come to the United States? Because of course our laws are different. I can't imagine that a university is going to have, or the continuing education portion. Will they one day get that way? Let's hope they do.
Yeah. And I haven't really yet, because when I first started, it was 2020, and then, borders things and all of that. But it's certainly available. If I was invited to come down and to speak, I would certainly do that.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful to know. And so how can people get a hold of you? I know you have a website.
Yes. My website is my first name, Terese.ca, which is TERESE.ca. And I do have a Facebook group too. It's called Healing with, I think it's Canna. The title is Healing with Cannabis, but when you're searching for it, I think it's Healing with Canna. But even looking at my name, Terese Bowors on Facebook, is a great way to connect with me, and then I can channel you into the groups and the other offerings that I have.
Well, of course, I'm going to list all of that in the description below the video, so everybody has a way of contacting you.
Hey, when we talked about the things that you need to look at when you're going into the store, so the ratio and the THC to CBD and all those, I have a free gift that is all about the 4 tips that you need.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I can put that in the description for people if they want to definitely get that. Because I myself, I'd like to know, like, how would I know? I have a back pain. The back pain's horrendous. How would I know? What do I do? I don't know what to take. And if someone can tell me what I can, I know that there are books, there were some sort of, spiral held with the clip, like spirally held book that you could flip through, I believe. But I don't think that they can tell you anything. So I would have no idea what I'm looking at. And now that you're telling me there's different strains and that maybe one works better than the other, how does anybody know? Do you have you have like a membership? If you're doing a certain amount of weeks, then once that's over, like, how does someone, it's almost like you need your own personal educator or coach, you know what I mean? Like, to call and say, listen, I need this, this, and this. Do you have a membership system?
Yes, my website is all membership based. And so when you become a client of mine, you become a member of my website. And then you can buy the package of coaching sessions together and then add on as you go. So a lot of clients will do that. They'll do the first intensive bit of 1 to 3 months. And then a month or 2 later, they're like, hey, I need a bit of a tweak. And they can book in again just for a follow-up session too.
Oh, that's great. So that's how your membership works. Once they become clients, then they are part of the membership group. And then how do you see it going? Do you see that it's going to be more accepted? Because you're working with this now a while, and it seems that Canada seems to be a little bit more open to the possibility that this helps people. Do you think that it will get any better, especially maybe here in the United States, that we're still riding that fence?
Yeah, I really do. Because as I see more and more states become legal, if it'll just have to bloom into federal legalization too. And so I do see that coming. And for other countries around the world as well, we're seeing the acceptance growing. And as we have more places that are publicizing positive
Mm.
effects of cannabis consumption in a very mindful way, I see it spreading for sure. So that's my job as an educator, is to keep that positive education going.
And then I'm wondering, do they do they should be doing some sort of testing, like some sort of record keeping, shouldn't they? You know, how the pharmaceutical companies do that. I mean, that's a whole story in and of itself. That's a topic for another day, but they do tests, and for all intents and purposes, they record findings. Is that done for this as well?
Yeah, so it's more happening on the ground level, like with us as consumers. So there's an
Mhm.
app called Strain Print, and it's a tracking app that you can keep track of your cannabis consumption. It's brilliant. So every time you get a new product, enter it into the app, record what you took,
Mm.
when you took it, and then it will remind you to come back and how did that product go? Give us an overview. And so with your permission, they will take your data on
Mhm.
anonymously and compile it so that they're building a database now of all of this. So this particular oil,
Mhm.
150 people tried it and this was their results. So that you can get kind of that, you can get that on the ground data. So they've already published some of that data. That app has been out, I think, for about 3 years or so. It is a Canadian app, but it's available. I think it's Canadian, but it's available everywhere. And so I really like those kind of on the ground,
Mhm.
real analytical, real data. What's it called? It starts with an A. I can't remember what that's called. Kind of research, anecdotal. Yeah.
Oh, anecdotal. Yes, right, because it's coming from
Mhm.
consumers. Oh, I'd
Yeah.
like to even put that in the description just to see if, in fact, it does work in the United States. I'm wondering how much they do and do not control, because
Yes.
I'm not that I have anything against it, but it wasn't anything that I looked into. I can only tell you from what I've heard from other people about the shops and that they can't be in a strip mall. They have to be buildings that are self-contained. So I know that that's a lot going on with that. And that's only in New York. Of course, I can't speak to other states because here we are with all these states, and I'm assuming that they all have their own laws and rules. And so, but as much as I know, that's why I was so thrilled that you were coming on. And then I'm going to have this, she's a former state senator specifically for New York. So she would have all of the rules and the laws and how things work. I know that I have gotten the CBD cream to try. And that was purchased mail order, though. That was online, and that came to me. And I know I purchased it I don't even know where it was created, but it was a company that was in the United States, and it was out west, and it came to me. And I don't know how that works. Like, could we purchase from Canada? I'm assuming there's laws there. Yeah, you can't
No,
ship out.
yeah, no cannabis can cross borders either way.
See?
And it never has been able to, but there was certain ways of getting around it
Mhm.
before, but I wouldn't do it at all now.
Yeah.
They're on guard now, watching for any cannabis
Wow.
products going across the border. Yeah.
Wow. So that's, yeah. So then, no, then people will have a problem getting it from an area that has a little bit more liberal rules where it's concerned. And so what's next for you? Because you're so busy. You're on the board of the Educan. So
Education.
yeah, and you're so busy. And I think also you're part of that Society of Cannabis clinicians. So what else is there for you? Because I know you're a busy woman.
Yeah. You know, what else is for me is that cannabis is a tool. It's one piece of the puzzle of getting us back to homeostasis and balance within our bodies. One of the other tools is really getting to know who we are and our divinity and recognizing us as sacred beings. And so that's kind of where I want to move to, is now that we have cannabis and it can help us with our sleep and help us with our pain, so that can take off those, top line stressors from our brain. When we're not sleeping and when we're in pain and when we're anxious, we can't thrive. And
Mhm.
so I want to bring cannabis in to help manage those symptoms, to help us bring our bodies back into homeostasis and balance so that we have more capabilities to be more aware of our beings, listen to our hearts, and get to know who we are really meant to be.
Yes, that's wonderfully said. Wonderfully said. Is it so true, right? To realize that we're divine. and that all these stressors are really, really temporary.
Yeah.
Because as you said earlier, you have to start to take care of yourself, right? You had to take care of yourself as well, because we have a tendency, especially as women, to push that to the side.
Right. That's
And
right.
that's when we become sick, we become ill, because we haven't taken the time to care for ourselves.
One of the other really just inspiring ways that I like to utilize cannabis is for in my meditative practice, in my grounding practice, in my troubleshooting. So when I get all stuck up here in my mind, and there's an issue and I want an answer, and I'm just like, what is the answer? If I just take a few moments, take some breaths, take a bit of cannabis, and feel into my body, let this go, and feel here, I can move forward. So cannabis can open that space for us to be more present, to get the answer. Sometimes the answers even come through when I can just drop the stress and the worry. And cannabis can help me do that. And it's thrilling when I'll take a couple of puffs, and then I feel that, like the very, very first time, feeling that weight lifting. So that possibilities can come forward. And I love to just share with my husband, like, guess what came? Guess what I just discovered? And it's always so just warming for my heart, and comes from a place of love. But it's with our intention first. That's the most important, is to intend how we want cannabis to work for us first.
Oh, that's good advice. Yes. It's all in the intention, right? At the outset. That's right. So true. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming today. I mean, it's only the tip of the iceberg, right? Because there really is so much to know. And I do hope that many of the audience members contact you, because it really is important for self-care, for health, for wellness, right? To look into our spirituality, our divinity, to work hand in hand. So to have someone like you that helps people out, I think that's so important.
Yeah. And the willingness to show up for yourself and for your own healing, and not to just keep pushing that symptom in the background, because it's here to teach us something, and it's here to move us forward. And so just, listening to our bodies, and bringing on safe and healthy tools that can help us move forward.
That's so true. And I want to thank you again, Terese. Hopefully we'll have you on again as things progress. I'm sure there will be. Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Bye now.
Bye-bye.